After the first season of The Mandalorian dropped, people were very excited. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau married together? Well, that was the kind of creative duo that Star Wars needed to revive it, to fix it, to bring it back after a dismal sequel trilogy that saw fans leaving Disney. However, cracks began to appear, and those who suspected all along that Dave Filoni did not have the good stuff, the right stuff to make Star Wars come back together, they had their doubts, significant doubts, and now many of us do. Ahsoka was supposed to be the big debut of Thrawn. It was supposed to drive us towards a major movie event. Now with the finale in the books, folks are wondering, can Dave Filoni ever come back from this? It's so bad, for so many, that the audience is surely shrinking to even new record low levels. We'll explain why, even to those who enjoyed it, right now. All right, folks, here we are. We have reached the end of Ahsoka, but it may also be the end of something else, and that is the end of Dave Filoni. There will be fans who will stick by his side, but I'm here to tell you, whether he makes more stuff for Star Wars or not, this was, to me, so bad that I'm done with Dave. I am out. It's over for me. It's like a bad breakup, but here we are. Folks, we're not just going to rain on the parade, though, of Ahsoka, although, trust me, it's tough. We're going to give it the analysis that it deserves. We're going to tell you what the story is, what it means. We're going to go through all of that. Well, let's just go. I'm not going to give any more of my thoughts. Lauren, I'm handing it to you right away. We've reached the end. Was it worthwhile?
If you're a Filoni fan, you will say that it is. I've been upfront about my take on this from the moment we started reviewing this show. I wanted to like it. I was willing to give it as fair a shake as I could. I don't like it. I think it was primarily a waste of time for the audience. I think the last two episodes were especially egregious, but I do think that it deserves some due analysis. And part of the reason that I say that is that I want to take this last episode especially seriously, because the last time we didn't do a review for episode 7, but we did talk about it a little bit on a video that week. And people took exception to me saying that I thought it was some of the worst Star Wars I'd ever seen, and I'd seen the holiday special and Obi-Wan. And I think people thought that I was going overboard with that. And I don't think so. But people did rightly point out there is The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi in the mix as well, and I unfairly omitted those two, so that is a good point. I think there were places that Ahsoka could have gone that could have been good, but as it is, I believe this is a failure of storytelling, and I think that it's important we point out why.
Well, we're definitely going to. I just want to put this sort of in the frame of where I'm coming from, folks. I think this belongs in the pantheon of worst finales of any TV series ever. I think it was that bad. I think it's bad enough that those who are not diehard Filoni fans are probably done. And let me give a couple of things. I sent this to you guys in messages. Here's where I'm coming from. In this, and by the way, folks, spoilers, of course. In this episode, Sabine discovers that she can use the Force now. And immediately after first learning she can use the Force, she would be the novice of all novices. She is a beginner of all beginners. And despite that, this episode features her coming up with a plan that involves throwing her friend that she came to save, throwing him where, well, he is to jump off a cliff, and her plan is to use the Force that she just used for the very first time to throw him into a spaceship door. That defies everything in the storytelling, because she clearly doesn't value his life, or we are watching a cartoon, and we indeed are watching a cartoon. There's also, in this, a part where stormtroopers become zombies. And when they become zombies, through the dark arts of the Night Sisters, They rise up and reattack our heroes, which has no consequence, so it didn't matter. But they do it. Who knows why, but they do it. But when they do it, the only reason they can is because lightsabers don't cut things anymore. So had they actually been chopped with the lightsabers, they would be in pieces and they would not be able to resurrect as zombies. But lightsabers don't cut through things anymore. They don't chop anything, except in rare occasion when Disney says, go ahead and allow it to do so. Then our heroes leave the zombies and they run through the corridors, where they discover that the way to stop the zombie stormtroopers is to drop the shield doors, which, by the way, there are apparently dozens of these doors along every single new flight of stairs. And by the way, Thrawn, who is supposed to be intellectual, could have dropped all of those doors and our heroes would have never gotten to the ship. But Thrawn, who is so intelligent, can't figure out that doors would be a good idea here. Oh, remember when we talked about Dave Filoni's wife? And remember when we talked about this owl creature? Yeah, it shows up. It's there. So for those of you out there who thought that wasn't pertinent, yeah, we got that one too. Lauren, you had a thought?
Yes, I do want to point out that if Thrawn had dropped the doors, then in all likelihood, what the heroes probably would have done would be to pull the fire alarm to open the doors so that they could get in.
They are not part of the House of Representatives, Lauren. They can't do that. Now, the other thing here that drove me absolutely insane was that these our good guys, when the TIE fighter lands in their ship, they have all their blasters drawn. They're ready to kill whoever comes out. Now, they don't, of course, shoot it down, which that would be, you would think they do that. They let it land, of course, in their ship. But when the person gets out, you would think that the person who gets out would be like, you know what? Since I am their friend, I'm going to get out and look like their friend. There's no point in me getting out and looking like the enemy. But oh no. Ezra gets out of the ship and slowly walks towards them, risking his life, dressed as a stormtrooper, like a Halloween party gone bad. And there is literally no reason for him to walk towards them dressed as a stormtrooper except for false dramatic effect. It makes no sense.
In which the audience already knows the answer to.
Yes.
The worst kind of reveal.
It's the worst writing. I mean, that is the sin. This is terrible writing. Whatever you think of where the story goes, whatever you think of the sequel trilogy, whatever you think of the World Between Worlds, and by the way, that's going nowhere. But this is horrible. This is horrific writing. This is elementary school writing. It is awful. Jonas, am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely correct. There isn't anything in this that is unpredictable. There's nothing that happens that's unexpected. Most of the tension comes from the lore.
What tension?
Good question. Yeah. Most of my questions come from the lore and where it's going. You know, I could say the word Abeloth. Oh, Abeloth is where it's heading, as if they want the internet machine to kick up and start talking about the Mortis gods and and the Morai, or the Chiss, or the what's the other one? The guys that are only in the EU that are completely unconnected to the Force.
The Yuuzhan and Vong. In the original EU.
I was going to say the Kirith Ungol, but Kirith Ungol is Lord of the Rings, which Filoni is very happy to steal from right now, I would say.
Well, Jonas brings up a good point in that they have no idea anything about their own lore. This is more proof positive. This out of the direct, which came out just as Ahsoka was airing. Star Wars just confirmed Sabine Wren's surprising Jedi status. We won't read the article, folks.
Well,
We'll
look
put the
at
link in the
that.
description.
That's what I was saying before. Look at that.
Yep. But if you read this, Sabine's a Jedi now. They're all Jedi. Everybody's Jedi. I don't know what they're going to do when they get to the Last Jedi, since Dave Filoni's characters can't die.
No,
she's
she's
like
a
1,000
Skywalker.
Jedi.
She's a Skywalker.
Oh, she should be a Skywalker. You're right. Sabine Skywalker. It's her new name. Lauren, how bad is it that Lucasfilm doesn't even know who are Jedi and what it takes to be a Jedi? Or, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to make of them.
This goes, I think, more to the cartoon style writing that we're talking about, but writing is overall the problem. I think there are two things that I think have bothered me the most about this series. One is the pacing. This was an 8-episode series, And there were 2 episodes that I could give a faint positive to, where I felt like there were some things that they could do that might be interesting. And
We
then
did review. I don't remember which episode, Lauren. Do you remember which episode we reviewed positively? We gave it an overall, like both of us gave it a positive score.
I believe
I
that
think it was
6.
the one. Was it the one right before the World Between Worlds, or the one right after the World Between Worlds?
The one right after.
Okay.
Yeah. There were things that they could have done, but by the time they got there, they were rapidly running out of time to do anything significant with this series, and then they wasted the penultimate episode. There were lots of rumors about things like Abeloth, like you're saying, Jonas, and I sort of knew that there's no way that's where they're leading with this, because you can't introduce something like that in the final episode when you have these plot points that you somehow have to resolve. Not to mention the fact that the only people that are going to know anything about Abeloth are going to be people who were both fans of the Clone Wars and the expanded universe, and read some of the later novels that dealt with that story plot point. That's such a niche audience that people would be lost again. On the other hand, they did do many things that I did expect they were going to do. This last episode was not very much of a surprise to me. What was a surprise to me was overall how, in my opinion, bad the fight choreography was.
Oh, that was awful.
And
let me bring something up here, Lauren, because you're right. I don't know who told Rosario Dawson to twirl those lightsabers like that to block the laser blasts. I don't know what that was. That looked so bad. She is just slowly twirling lights. All of them were, but it's more visible with her character.
Now,
Slowly
Diana
twirling
Lee
them.
Inosanto, who plays Morgan Elsbeth, she does have fight training, and that was pretty obvious. Her choreography was really good, but the rest was just slow and obvious. I'm very glad that you brought up that the night trooper situation would have been easily resolved if lightsabers were behaving as lightsabers. But Disney is so squeamish about the idea of dismemberment, although they did allow a beheading, which I thought was
right.
a little
Behind
strange
the
when
pillar,
which blew that excuse.
Yeah, so the inconsistencies that are involved here are pretty incredible. Going back, though, to the things that really bothered me about this series, pacing is one of them. But the other one that I've been chewing on for the entire run of this series is, I want to ask you guys, because I have my own thoughts and I'm still kind of chewing on this a little bit. Who would you call the protagonist of this series?
Baylan Skull.
Baylan.
I'm not even sure Baylan is the protagonist.
I don't care. He's the only character's interesting. Maybe the protagonists are the little turtle snail creatures. Like, they're the good guys. They're getting ripped off, though.
It's not Ahsoka. If it's any of the good guys, it's Sabine.
In all seriousness, though, what I'm trying to get at is that I don't think any of the characters were actually moving the plot forward. And I think this is part of what has annoyed me about this series the most. There is consequences of what happened in this series. Ezra does come back to the galaxy proper. Ahsoka and Sabine are now stranded in this other galaxy. Thrawn is back in our galaxy. Dathomir is now inhabited with Night Sisters again, plus a bunch of resurrected troops. So there have been things that have happened. But I've got to ask, if they had not bothered to do any of this, if Ahsoka and Sabine had not bothered to go to look for Ezra, outside of Ezra making it back to the galaxy, would anything have changed?
Well, okay. Here's my pushback on that just a little bit. I'm not sure that there's any question of anything in terms of, nothing moved forward because we know where this goes. We know that Thrawn does not take over the galaxy. Maybe Snoke comes about through Thrawn. We know that Ahsoka and Sabine will come back to the galaxy. They're not going to be stranded forever. And that blows all the tension of the end. Because here's the thing, Lauren, when they took, and I never believed they were going to use the World Between Worlds to retcon the sequel trilogy. Never believed it.
Yeah,
what I'm realizing is
that didn't happen.
Yeah. For those out there who have been, telling everybody that was going to happen, how about that? But here's the thing. I realize now that without it, this series has zero tension because we know that Thrawn doesn't succeed.
Well,
we know that the heroes. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think that's a cheat because it's Star Wars has never been told in any kind of chronological order, and I do think that you can tell a satisfying story that's more about the journey and how you get there, even if you know what the conclusion is. I don't think that that's a good explanation for why this series nothing really happens. I think that there are things that could have happened that would have been impactful and important.
Well, I agree with that second point, but let me say this too, though. What I'm talking about, though, is we end on this cliffhanger of Ahsoka and Sabine supposedly stranded in another galaxy. But nobody has any fear that they'll stay there. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't draw any tension to the story for the audience because we already know they'll never stay there.
Well, this is, I think, another reason why I've been annoyed with how they've been telling stories with these TV series. One of the things that we were talking about before we started recording here tonight between Jonas and I was we were going over the ending of the series. And Jonas was saying, well, you saw Balin walking on some statues. Big deal. Those statues actually are a big deal. They are the father and the son. I couldn't tell if the daughter
only they had
there.
ever been mentioned at any point during any second of this.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But you remember what I said a few weeks ago. This is actually where I speculated Balin was going. He's trying to reach Mortis, and I believe he's trying to do it through the world between worlds. And I do believe there is a doorway that is on that planet, and that it's going to require at least 2 Jedi to enter the temple, open the doorway, and get there. That'll eventually be their mechanism to return them to the galaxy proper, I believe. But they've now written themselves into such an awful corner because Ray Stevenson is dead. And I don't know how you try and resolve that. I don't think you can recast him.
I bet they already shot whatever it is. And they're ghoulish, and usually I use the phrase digital necromancy. They when they signed him for this, they probably signed some kind of contract that allows them to use him in the series in Star Wars and use his likeness forever.
Probably.
I'm willing to bet that they could have even somebody, and good luck finding somebody with that exact frame.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that in the first episode where Balin and Ahsoka had a fight, I think that may have been episode 3, I want to say.
It's hard to keep up with how many times they've all fought and lived every single time.
Yeah.
My point is, there was a very obvious stunt performer that was in for Ray Stevenson in one of those scenes, and it was obvious that it was not Ray.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they have the budget or the time to actually do that kind of digital replacement in a way that's convincing.
What do you mean they don't? Well, they might not have the budget now. I mean, these shows are easily
Lucasfilm budgets. No, don't worry. They'll spend $100 million if allowed.
My point being that, again, you have a show that we've had an entire season, and that season is just a commercial for the next season. And this is a problem that I think the Marvel series got into, the Marvel movies as well as the television shows. And Star Wars is aping it. And that is a real big problem. And I think that this is why, from my standpoint, Ahsoka doesn't matter. This series did not.
Yeah, I totally agree. Does not matter whatsoever unless you just wanted to ride the roller coaster.
Oh,
and I don't think it was a worthwhile roller coaster.
Let's bring up another thing, because this is another way that I feel that they have written themselves into a worse corner than they were in before. Because you've now brought Thrawn back to the galaxy proper. He has these Night Sister witches that he has brought back to Dathomir, and he has all these sarcophagi that he is likely going to be resurrecting for troops. Now, this solves the problem of Thrawn not having troops to work for him. They solved that in the original Thrawn novels by having him start what amounted to a new round of Clone Wars. But they haven't solved the problem with ships. The Chimera is not space-worthy. He doesn't have a spaceport. He doesn't have a dock. He doesn't have ships. How is he going to resolve that problem? How is this not just a problem for Dathomir?
Well, I suspect that he will say some nonsensical thing that is not very witty whatsoever, and then he will turn around and walk away with his hands behind his back, because in the 3 episodes that he's appeared in, that has been the full roster of what Thrawn is capable of. I think that happened about 25 times in 3 episodes. Thrawn says something very underwhelming, turns around, walks away, camera follows. Folks, if you don't believe it, go back and watch it, and I'm sorry to have to force you to do so, but please, somebody out there, get all the clips of Thrawn turning away and walking around. I bet you, I'll bet you it's 25 times.
He's also not really acting in character for Thrawn. One of the things that really bothered me in this episode was that he was giving some orders that I don't think were sensical. That's been a problem since he's appeared. He's vastly undercommitting his troops, particularly if he can just resurrect them when he needs them. But in this case,
I hadn't thought of that. You're right.
He was
just, they're dead. Bring them back. It's all good. We got nice sisters.
He specifically mentions that he doesn't want to overuse his troops.
And yet, it doesn't seem to matter if they die. That's a problem. So, but besides that, when he was thwarted in one of his early attempts to delay them getting back to their stronghold, he was visibly frustrated. And this is the problem that Thrawn had in Rebels as well, in which you have these essentially B-list cartoon characters that are outsmarting the greatest tactical mind that the Empire has. Thrawn can be wrong, but he always has a backup plan, and even if his plans fail, usually he has crafted them in such a way that an advantage will still confer to him. So even when he loses, he gains a victory.
So
I want one of those grand plans. Go ahead, Jonas.
That to me is like the Worf effect. Whenever someone showed up on Star Trek and they wanted to demonstrate that they're strong, the first thing they would do is go over and throw Michael Dorn into a panel that would then explode or something like that. Point. So instead of writing Thrawn smarter, they write Thrawn lesser, so he looks like he's been outsmarted.
But nothing involved is ever smart. Yeah.
Right. They show him being frustrated because they want to show, oh no, our Rebels characters are the crew of the Ghost. They're so amazing. And when really what they've done is lessened their. It's the same thing with the female hero tropes where they just make the male hero that you already know look bad rather than actually make the female hero look better or clever.
Jonas, I want Thrawn, because he's got 2 people riding towards his whatever the pillar is that he's got the ship docked to. He's got 2 people riding into that pillar on rat dog horse things, howlers, woofers, whatever we're going to call them,
but not the same rat dog horse things. That
not the same. No, there was a bond there that lasted all of 1 episode. Shut up! Don't bring it up, Jonas. May that one rest in peace. They shot it off screen. So. As they're riding into the pillar, you have this giant ship firing every laser beam it can at the dog, horse, rat creatures. And amazingly, without the use of the Force or anything, nothing happens to our heroes, and we never believe anything's going to happen. And I just wanted Thrawn to look at the camera, break the 4th wall and go, huh, well, I really don't know how to kill them then. You could drop a nuclear bomb on these characters and they'll just keep on riding, baby.
Right. We have also the same bit more than once where somebody falls off of a cliff and is fine.
Oh, well,
because in that case they land on the ship.
Someone.
There is one scene in this episode that I really did like, and I'm not being facetious here. I thought this was an awesome shot. I do want to call it out because I thought if this was an image of Thrawn that we got, and he was displayed as competent, it would have been a really amazing shot. And that is right at the beginning of the episode when you see him framed in the center and the TIE fighters come down and launch forward. That was an awesome cinematic shot. So I do want to give them credit for that. It evoked a particular mood. Unfortunately, I don't believe Thrawn lived up to it. So
let's talk about.
Here's an instance where I think they wanted that shot. And so they had him announce that he was going to send the TIE fighters.
Yeah.
Right. We need 2 TIE fighters. So, yep.
Right.
So he's going to announce the 2
later
TIE fighters.
Of tension of, okay, well, now 2 TIE fighters have shown up, as opposed to it being a surprise. Now it's something they've, in fact, announced. So the shot was cool. The dramatic tension that should have come from that is now gone.
Agree.
So let's talk Baylan and Shin. Those were the coolest characters in the show.
No
Morgan was
lines.
not, but Morgan
And this
did get a green flamey sword, so that was cool. She got a little World of Warcraft sword.
Yep,
No-
another thing that can best a lightsaber, by the way.
Yep, no lore behind that given to us in the show. It just appears, and I'm sure we'll read about it somewhere, or there was a comics at some point. Lauren will tell us all about it, but we got a green World of Warcraft sword, so that was good. But our the two that actually, when they were on screen, we had a good time. Balin and Shin. Tell us what's happened to them, Lauren. What's going on? We know Balin is at the statue that would take us to the world between worlds, but that can't happen because his actor passed away. What about Shin? What's she doing now?
She's formed up with the raiders that are on that planet. Presumably, they have some kind of alliance and are going to continue to hunt Ahsoka and Sabine and the naughty.
And why did she do that? Why didn't she just stay on the ship?
The hottie is going to find the naughty?
Ooh. Jonas, we've been criticized for our thumbnails lately.
Her name is Shin. Her name is Shin Hottie. This was more than me. This was not me complimenting the woman's physique.
Jonas, how dare you bring up the writing and the creative genius that is Dave Filoni? You leave Shin Hottie alone.
Did she have any lines in this episode, by the way?
No.
Did Balin Skull have any lines?
Jonas, you are questioning the genius of Dave Filoni again? Stop it.
I am wondering, though, if the reason for that is that because Ray did pass away, I'm wondering if he originally did have lines that would have led into whatever happens in succeeding seasons, and because they can't do that, maybe they're giving themselves some wiggle room to figure out.
But then why would they put him at the statues? Because then that just sticks them in another corner.
Yes, but they can't leave him completely out of the episode. You couldn't just not have him for the finale, so they have to foreshadow something. And my guess, like I said, is I believe that it will be the world between worlds. We don't know that for sure, but we definitely have a visual reference for Mortis. So it is something involving those plot points.
All right. So Shin, though, why would she? I don't understand her character arc whatsoever. So someone explain it to me, please. I don't know why she's now with random raiders that she has no attachment to whatsoever.
She is ambitious.
Got it. All right. Ambitious herd. Let's jump then. Gentlemen, Jonas, we'll go to you on this. Sabine. This has been the Sabine show, essentially, not the Ahsoka show. Does Sabine come to any sort of satisfying character arc conclusion here? Or
the only revelations they have here, obviously, other than the fact that now she's confirmed as a Jedi, to which
Sabine. Sorry, folks. I should have given her proper title.
Resistant to that idea, I'll say. They said that, yet again, Ahsoka was fearful of what Sabine would become if she trained her to be a Jedi. Also, none of that happened in Rebels 1 through 4. So it's yet another moment where I guess something more interesting happens off screen because they can't do these in front of your eyes.
I would love to see the off-screen things they reference because they're amazing.
Do we want to address Anakin at the end?
Well, that is the thing I wanted to end on. Was it the 2004 DVDs where they inserted him? I think it was the 2004 set.
Just let's stay with Sabine first, though. We'll get to that because oh my gosh! But Sabine. Guys,
nothing. They did nothing. They said that she has the Force. She doesn't have that much Force, and then all of a sudden, Ezra Bridger, who is apparently this amazing, he's got the Force
Kung Fu Force master,
who doesn't need a lightsaber because he trusts the Force. Instead, he
practically
picks up a blaster, and then he makes his own lightsaber.
The last Force bender.
Yeah, and so he's a Jedi supermaster. He's had nothing to do for 5 years or however many years it is, and he needs a.
How many years has it been, Lauren? How many years was he stranded?
I think we're at about 10 years at this point.
Yeah,
10
I'm glad they went straight to banter after a decade of him being abandoned and banished to another galaxy.
I will say 4 years of Rebels did nothing to incite my interest in that character, and having him in live action, I still am waiting for this character to be interesting to me.
Why did they portray him as a cross between Jesus and Bruno from Encanto?
Because they have no good ideas.
I'm actually going to split from you a little bit here.
Split away.
I kind of liked his portrayal of Ezra. I don't think they did anything particularly useful with him, but I do think that he's got some charisma, and I think that there's something that could be done with the character. I think that it did him a disservice by not explaining at all what he's been doing this entire time, other than roaming around the countryside with the naughty. They didn't explain how he got away from Thrawn, what their parting was like. Why
Absolutely.
Thrawn?
He's
Why
the naughty
Thrawn
boy.
even why Thrawn even bothered with these characters if he wasn't attempting to track?
That's what
them
I
and
don't
follow
understand,
them?
Lord. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. None of this made sense.
To me,
Why?
to me, it was logical if Thrawn knew that there's a doorway to the world between worlds there, and that is what I have believed ever since Thrawn was introduced. Since he apparently didn't know and truly did want to escape, I don't understand why he didn't just leave them alone.
I don't understand it at all. He could have just stranded them.
Or
Anybody have a solution to this one? Or is this just a giant pile of nonsense we watched?
Or is this the only planet in this entire galaxy, and they've decided to stay there as opposed to building power somewhere else in this galaxy? He's got a Star Destroyer.
Well, there's also the fact that, as far as we know, besides the Raiders and the folks that have been transplanted to this galaxy, apparently there's only the 3 Night Sisters. That's all there is.
That's also so strange too.
Who share their names with the Fates.
Yeah.
And
share those names with us, guys. What are the names of the Night Sisters so the audience out there knows?
Oh, I've forgotten now, but it's the exact same names with different spellings of the Fates from Greek mythology.
Which is, again, folks, remember, Shin Hati wants to hurt the naughty, and the Night Sisters' names all rhyme. You all want to defend the writer behind this, you have at it. I'm done. This whole Thrawn thing was a bunch of nonsense. He doesn't have a plan. There's nothing there. You have lightsabers going through people's livers, and they're just fine. You have lightsabers going through stormtroopers, and they stay intact, and then they're raised as zombies, but it has no impact on the plot whatsoever. You have a situation where every stormtrooper has their blasters pointed at someone, and for whatever reason, for a fight scene, they stop shooting. So we can all sit there and watch the Warcraft sword be used against the lightsaber when they could just shoot her. Right. And they won't shoot her.
How many blaster bolts can be blocked by a single lightsaber blade? Apparently 3 dozen.
Every one of them. Every one.
So the Greek Fates names were Clotho, the spinner, Lachesis, the allotter, and Atropos, the unturnable, a metaphor for death. So I don't know if that gets us anywhere, but there you go.
If you looked up the name of the characters, they'd be very, very close to that.
And the only way we know that is because their names were shown in the subtitles, correct?
Right. Speaking of subtitles and end credits, Sam Witwer did not appear in this series. So Galen Merrick didn't show up. So Merrick was a misdirect. Enoch,
it literally was a suit of armor controlled by magic.
Yep. Enoch, he might as well be another suit of armor controlled by magic. I have no care for who this character is. His style does not fit Star Wars. It fits Rome perfectly. You stick some stormtrooper armor on a Roman gladiator. Okay, it might end up looking like that. I don't see how Star Wars produces something that looks like that. It makes no sense to me. A lot of voice changers and a lot of just, I don't know.
There's one other thing that I want to mention about Thrawn that occurred to me in this episode in particular, is that my feeling has always been that Thrawn was not really a proponent of the Empire. He was a proponent of order and having a strong defense against an outer adversary. This Thrawn does seem to believe in the Empire. And so that to me was a little jarring, and I'm not quite sure if it's Thrawn used the Empire. I don't know that I would say he was against the Empire. It's just that it was a means to an end for him in the Thrawn novels and elsewhere. So I'm not sure what this Thrawn wanting to rebuild the Empire is really about. It seems to me that if he is worried about an outer threat, as he has been portrayed in the novels, that it would make more sense at that point to strike an alliance with the New Republic and hopefully fix all of their problems.
Yeah, that makes no sense to me either. And I think they want to make the threat of the Empire returning something a little bit more than it is.
Although it never will return,
Order.
so we don't have any. There's no tension there anyway. So why they would want to do that, I don't understand.
This does have to lead into the First Order, because I think the point of bringing the Night Sisters back, besides the fact that they do need a Force adversary, is that in The Rise of Palpatine, when they try and explain how Palpatine returned, what they say is dark science, secrets only the Sith knew. It's
and the Night
there's another
Sisters, of course.
yeah, so that's going to be part of that. Cloning, dark science, and secrets.
So we're not retconning the sequel trilogy. That's what we're saying. Dave Filoni is not going to retcon the sequel trilogy. Let's say it for everybody out there in the back. Dave Filoni is not going to retcon, fix, or otherwise adjust the sequel trilogy.
Right. So you have the cloning aspect that was pursued by Moff Gideon and partially solved by obtaining Grogu's blood. Now you have the secrets only the Sith knew, which they obtained from the Night Sisters in this case. The dark science part is probably everything that they were doing on Exegol with the armature and the frames and all of the medical equipment that was keeping his husk of a body alive. So at that point, you have all of the components that you need to at least try and justify his existence.
Yay. Guys, let's also talk about how slow a spaceship can lift off of a pillar as our friends look, and I use the word friends loosely here, look at how far they'll have to jump. Guys, is that typical for that spaceship to move at 1 mile per hour or less? I was really perplexed by the slow speed at which it left.
Honestly, depends on the source. If you look at if you look at the original movies, in A New Hope, Star Destroyers actually move surprisingly fast. But in almost every other source since, they're not particularly fast vehicles, particularly in atmosphere. They are fast in hyperspace, but they're not intended to be an interceptor. That's why you have starfighters aboard. They're the capital ship that is more like an aircraft carrier. So,
well, at this point, I think, what are the names of the little snail turtle creatures? Those are the naughty.
Yeah.
I think a paralyzed naughty could outspeed that sucker. That was exceedingly long and drawn out.
Did you look at the condition of the Chimera? It's in really bad shape. I did not have a problem.
Makes one wonder how it survived the hyperspace. But I also, guys, maybe we are just going to rip it apart. We probably should. This was really bad. It probably deserves that. But did anyone else notice that when Sabine is lifted up and the guy, he's not choking her when she's reaching for the lightsaber. So I don't really know what was going on there. I don't know if he was trying to break her clavicles. It's a really interesting technique he was attempting there to not choke her. But did anyone else notice that the zip lines, which were erased by CGI and FX later, they lifted her up before the guy was ready to lift her, and so she actually kind of. Did you notice that? Did anybody notice her being elevated?
It was the Force. It was the Force.
It was the Force. It looked really bad. All of that said, let's get to the last big reveal. Unless you guys have anything else to say about this atrocious episode.
Can I just point something out here that I've observed? This is the only Thrawn toy. These are the only Thrawn toys available. Here, if you look up,
talk about a skin color swap. Oh wait,
yeah,
I thought we were looking at Snow White for a moment.
Luke from Heir to the Empire, and obviously this is not Lars Mikkelsen. If you look up Ahsoka, you actually get stuff. And here's what you get when you look up Sabine Wren or Ezra Bridger. So it kind of
there's not a lot of confidence, eh?
Yeah. I'm not seeing a good push for merchandising here, which is
maybe Hasbro got cold feet when they got a gander at this thing.
I'll bet you they could get some good merchandising out of the Night Troopers. I'll bet there's people that would collect those.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Troopers. Cosplayers are always looking for a good deviation from the standard Stormtrooper armor. because it's more fun.
Good point. Although you never see anybody really dressed up in the red armor from the sequel trilogy. Don't know why.
Oh, and that red armor was kind of stolen from a cosplay design anyways.
Lauren, you had a thought? We cut you off a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the Night Sisters would probably sell too, because they're visually interesting and they give you another antagonist. And I think that's something that Star Wars is really struggling with, is that because the Sith have been eliminated, they don't have a good adversary for the Jedi, and they desperately need one.
Well, they do need one. They also need protagonists. They badly need that too. They need everything. But one thing we did get, as you guys alluded to earlier, we got another cameo. We got another member berry, this time Anakin. So, gentlemen, what did you think of Anakin appearing in another galaxy as a Force ghost?
There are always going to be people that every time that you see Anakin show up, they're going to cheer and applaud, and that's fine. I understand that there are major fans of the character. But in this case, I feel that it's another betrayal of his character by Disney, because they have shown him appearing to see that Ahsoka is now prospering, and he's happy to see that she has resolved some of her difficulties with being a Jedi. Fair enough. But you haven't given us Anakin with Luke. And there were some people that said in the comments, well, you did see him at the celebration at Return of the Jedi. Yes. But we need a moment where Luke and Anakin can actually speak to each other. And the fact that they have given us this with Anakin and Ahsoka before they ever gave it to Luke, I think is shameful.
Jonas?
I reference those special edition DVDs from back in the day where it was the first moment where I got to the end of my viewing of Return of the Jedi, and I was a little disappointed that Yub Nub had been replaced, but I got it, He wanted to make it the cap off to the original, to the whole series, instead of just saving everybody from the original trilogy. And then Hayden Christensen shows up, and I was angry at that point. And now I see Hayden Christensen show up, and I like him a lot more. It doesn't make me angry anymore to see him there, because the Clone Wars series actually made me like the character of Anakin Skywalker a lot more and appreciate Hayden Christensen's arc, even though he's not the actor for the Clone Wars series. Now I see him show up and I laugh, and that is not the reaction that I think Disney wants us to have. I kind of chuckle and I shake my head and I think, they've got no new good ideas here. I don't see the bond between Ahsoka and Anakin. The bond that I see between Ahsoka and Anakin in the animated shows has not translated to Rosario Dawson and Hayden Christensen in live action. It does not work for me. And so I see it as corporate product, and maybe that's me being cynical, but I don't think they stuck the landing on that one.
I think that's the perfect way to describe the series. It is corporate product.
I do like the Anakin appearance in the 5th episode, and I still maintain, for me at least, that was not really his Force ghost. They were not really in the world between worlds, I believe.
But this is his Force ghost.
But this muddies the waters there even more, because whether or not it's an echo of him, whether or not it's a daydream, I don't want to debate it. I think it's silly that they're muddying the waters here.
I agree with you that they've muddied the waters, but I don't think the reason that the episode 5 arc works for me is that I see it as being equivalent to what happened to Luke in the cave on Dagobah in The Empire Strikes Back. This is Ahsoka having to deal with a trial within herself that is pointing out a flaw that she has and an issue that she has not yet resolved. And she has to resolve that to come to maturity and actually become a Jedi Knight. So in that sense, that works for me. That is a mental and spiritual battle. It just wasn't in the world between worlds.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, to wrap up, the things that we granted this series at times when we said, okay, this is really bad, but what if they're going in this direction? And we constantly said, maybe Maybe they're doing this, in which case we'll go back and say, nope, we had it wrong. They actually did a great job. First one, we talked about the idea that perhaps Sabine was not a Force user. She was not able to do that, and that she was not the type of person who needed to be the Padawan, the apprentice to Ahsoka, and that would be the big lesson, and that would be something brand new in Star Wars, and that Jason actually would become the one that she should train. We haven't seen Jason since, and clearly Sabine, she just like Rey, she got those Force powers right on time, and they just exploded into full Jedi Master mode. So, gentlemen, any thoughts on that one being gone?
No.
We also go ahead, Lauren.
I want to be careful how I talk about this, because I think there's a debate within the Star Wars community as to whether you can only become a Jedi through bloodline or whether all it requires is training. And
I think it just requires a declaration through StarWars.com.
Well, I think there is some merit to the idea that everybody is within the Force. The Force is through everybody. You do have a certain level of midichlorians no matter what, and that training can benefit you. And so I don't think that it is necessarily as exclusive as some people would say. My argument against Sabine wanting to become a Jedi has more to do with the fact that this is mythological storytelling. And in these type of stories, you're dealing with archetypes. And there are certain archetypes that these tend to be pretty shallow characters. They're not really all that deep. They do go through an arc, but it is usually within their archetype. What they're trying to do by making Sabine a Jedi is switch her archetype, and that's where my core argument comes from. Her conflict was about the fact that she worked with the Empire to develop weapons, and that negatively impacted Mandalore. She dealt with that conflict with Kanan and came to accept what she had done to gain control to try and fight and restore Mandalore. Some people are saying that, well, she now has a new conflict because her family's been wiped out in the Purge. All of that happened off screen, like many of the other things that supposedly have happened to Sabine. But I feel that for her to suddenly now decide that, okay, now I need to be a Jedi, that's a regression. She had gained her confidence. If she is so weak that she cannot hang on to that and continue to fight without changing who she is fundamentally, she's a weak character.
Agreed.
We also talked about Thrawn, and
Or it
that
weakens the Jedi.
at every turn, perhaps Thrawn was outsmarting even the audience. Maybe we didn't even know what he had come up with yet. At the end of this, I think it's fair to say that Thrawn is just an imbecile, and that's probably because he's being written by unintelligent people. Not maybe they're intelligent in other ways. They can probably change the oil on a car. No, they can't. But they can do other things, I'm sure.
I would say
they cannot write a
if
smart Thrawn.
If you write this same character and have everyone react to him as if he's an imbecile, it doesn't change any of his actions.
Except it makes more sense to the audience.
Right.
Yeah, I put that fully at the feet of the writers. I think maybe if you had different writers that come in afterwards in following seasons, or they may still do something with him that surprises us all. I don't think the fault is Lars, but I do feel that Thrawn was acting out of character for what we know of him, and I think that that's going to undermine how people receive him.
And then finally, there was much discussion that we would go to the world between worlds, or that this was leading to that. We now have a perhaps portrayal that could happen in a future season. The actor who is potentially going there has passed away. So I don't think that's going anywhere. And I think that even if they had used the world between worlds, it would just be to move Ahsoka and Sabine from one galaxy to the other. And I think that's utterly boring. So I don't even know that I want to do that anymore. I don't know that I want to play with Star Wars anymore. What do you guys wrap this up? I'll give it to you both. I'm done with Dave. There's one other thing we have to mention. We talked about how the owls, we talked about this 2 days ago, and we may have taken a hit on the channel for doing it, but we talked about how the owls in Star Wars are Dave Filoni's love letter to his wife, He named them after her. He uses them for the strong characters. Is there anything I mean, did you guys gather any reason the owl shows up other than to tell us, hey, Ahsoka's like Gandalf, she's cool?
I think it is to tie into the world between worlds. And I think the reason that the world between worlds could still be a credible threat is not necessarily for what Balin is doing. My supposition was that Thrawn needed access to it, and that's why he was following what was going on with Balin and Shin, was that in the Lothal Temple, it required 2 Jedi to open. It needed Kanan and it needed Ezra to gain access to that temple. So my guess is any doorway that goes to the world between worlds will require something similar. Balin and Shin couldn't open it, but Ezra and potentially Ahsoka could, and now Sabine, since she is now
We've got tons of Jedi now, Lauren. I mean, we can.
But my point is,
Thrawn... Maybe a Howler is a Jedi by the end of this thing.
Thrawn could not access it. And if he was able to manipulate the pieces on the board to get an opening to it that he could then cross, that to me was what Thrawn's ultimate plan was. And I could see that being a very dangerous thing that you do not want to have in his hands, because at that point, he's a master strategist. He's going to use that to his advantage. And I think that there are still potentially ways that they could bring that to fruition, but I think it's more difficult now that he's elsewhere. And it doesn't look like that was his plan in the first place. So I don't really know where they go with that.
He's not necessarily smart anymore. So that makes it difficult to, when you have someone who's supposed to be a daunting enemy because of his intellect, and he's not intellectual or even average IQ. Like, he needs a sidekick in this show who every time he says something, the sidekick goes, "What are you talking about? You're so stupid!" You know, if we had that kind of a character, like, it would make sense. "Dude, TIE fighters, what are you doing, man?" You know, something like that.
I mean, as long as we're talking about the show, the tone of the show is so dour anyways. It almost has no sense of humor. It's all that joy of life that comes from a nice perspective character like Luke Skywalker, big bright-eyed farm boy, learning about the world. Star Wars doesn't have those characters anymore. It's very disappointing.
It is. I can still have a lot of fun with the original movies. I still like the prequels, not as much as the original trilogy, of course. And there's still parts of Star Wars I like, but I think I'm done with Dave. I'm sure we'll have to review stuff in the future. I think the audience, though, is checked out. I looked at the ratings from Nielsen; they're going down. Lauren, I don't know that you have to review this again if we do a second season. It seems like it's punishment at this point, but
yeah, you're going to have to work on me for that. There is right now. There's only one future series that I have any interest in whatsoever,
and that is
it's The Acolyte, isn't it?
It's Young Jedi Adventures Season 2.
It's Andor Season 2. And actually,
I can see that.
I was thinking today about Skeleton Crew, and now that it appears that Thrawn has made it back to the galaxy proper, which I did not expect. I thought he was still going to remain trapped here. I'm guessing maybe he won't be in Skeleton Crew, which is what I originally thought. So I was thinking today, I think you'd have a better time doing Skeleton Crew rather than a Lost in Space kind of thing with kids and this teacher. What if you told a literal pirate story? What if you had Imperial defectors who like, just after the fall of Endor, took some Imperial equipment and went and became pirates? That would at least tie into the name of the series. I could see you doing a swashbuckling series with pirates in Star Wars. Why not?
I'm up for almost anything you can come up with, Lauren, and I'm not up for things that Lucasfilm come up with. Folks, I think that Star Wars is going to decline precipitously after this. I really do. I'm not just saying this, and we've done a very long review. We felt it was worthwhile to do that, but I'm here to say I think the decline in viewership is going to be even greater than it's ever been, because they were pinning The Mandalorian, they were pinning all of this Dave Filoni stuff on Thrawn. I don't think anybody is walking away from this impressed with Thrawn. If you're impressed with this bad guy, you really wanted to be impressed with this bad guy, because he's not bad. He's just mundane. And that, I think, is where we wrap this up, folks. If you enjoyed Ahsoka and you made it all the way to this point, you are a trooper, and we applaud you, and we're happy you're enjoying Ahsoka.
And if you didn't make it, maybe the Night Sisters can resurrect you from the dead.
That's right. Bring you back as a viewer.
Hey, sound design was good. Music was good. Special effects were good.
Can I make one further interjection just here at the very end?
Absolutely.
So when the teaser trailer for Ahsoka came out at Star Wars Celebration in April, and there was a scene of Ahsoka uttering the lines, "Heir to the Empire," I kind of bristled at that. And I decided at that point on my YouTube channel that I was going to read "Heir to the Empire" for those people so that they could see what, to my mind, the real Episode 7 with the real Thrawn was like. And I didn't know if there was going to be any kind of audience for that. My channel is relatively small. It's not got a great number of followers, but those that have been there, it's been a lot of fun to interact with them. I was quite surprised to find that there were many people that had not read the original Thrawn trilogy. And so I did end up reading the entire trilogy. That concluded tonight. I finished The Last Command, which is the third book in that series, because I wanted it to conclude on the night that Ahsoka finished. So if you're interested in seeing what the real Thrawn was like and hearing the books that, to my mind, are the real Episodes 7, 8, and 9, go to my YouTube channel. It's at Lorne Connor 9030, and you can hear the entire Thrawn trilogy there.
Highly recommend it, folks. You can also find Lorne every single day on www.thatparkplace.com, where he is a featured TPP contributor. So definitely check him out. Guys, I think that Ahsoka is better than the Book of Boba Fett, but not by much. And I think they're both at the very bottom. Lorne, you think it's worse than Boba Fett?
For me, yeah, I actually think it is. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's be careful because you might push me to there. The Vespas keep me.
I think when you average it out,
dreams.
Yeah, I think when you average it out, Boba Fett is slightly better.
Okay, let me say this. If you take out the Luke Skywalker episode, it's better than Boba Fett. If you keep Luke Skywalker in, that's unfair.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does have Boba Fett riding a Rancor, which is ridiculous, but it was very entertaining.
Okay. God, it's been so bad. They're so bad. It's all so bad. I can't take it anymore. Why?
You guys, this review has to end so at bad. Some point. This review.
All right, folks. We're going to wrap this thing up. Jonas, where can people find you?
You can find me every day on That Park Place, a news channel where we like to go through all the news that should be fun. It's kind of like a news magazine style where we'll have some big headlining story, and then we get to fill in with all those things that YouTube isn't necessarily trying to push, but are fun to talk about. So come check us out over there.
And Lorne, you've already told us where we can find you. Folks, if you want to find these gentlemen, click on the link down in the description below, and it will take you to their YouTube pages. All right, you have made it to this point. It's time to say, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you do indeed stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below and tell us what you think. It is finally time for you to join in the conversation. Let us know, did we do well with this? Are you of the same mind? Or did we completely miss the boat? And is Dave Filoni the savior that Star Wars needs? I say, woof. And maybe that makes me a little bit like those poor howlers being ridden by the heroes who have no heroism within. All right, folks, that's a wrap. We'll see you soon, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Keep learning, keep growing, keep having fun.
Listen up, my brothers and sisters. You've been listening to Phils and those with an agenda to destroy your brain cells for far too long. It's time to change your way of doing things. Hold up. TPP is the place to be. Covering the news so honestly. It's a team that's cool and tried and true. Ahead of the culture curve, they're trying to keep you. Jonas and Pro, they run the show, and they dragged in the bearded culture casino. You got Valiant and Lord and Fourth of Line. Wonderful people, yeah, they're alright. They got weird bringing in people like Flora, but made no mistake with Lorena Creole. Amelia and John, stuttering guitarist. Martin and Tawny and someone called CMS. Fats even makes a bunch of all the graphics. Did I mention a partnership with Bending in the comics? Fat Sky is a guy and Doc Matt does the web stuff. There's probably some people I missed. I hope they're not telling you the news. That should be fun. With accurate info that's not been spun. You can figure it out as you will see. The TPP is the place to be.